Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have plenty to discuss. I think we're going to do the Olympic for Team Russia today. I'm not 100% sure, but I know Ak had some news that he'll be talking about, and there he pops into the room right now. So we've started the pre-show, Ak.
I'm cutting my hair. I apologize for being late.
By yourself?
My daughter was. Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody to cut my hair.
I mean, mine's easy, right? So.
There's so little of it, but it needs to be formed the right way.
Yes, I imagine it does. Mine. I was getting that '80s Yarmer Yager mullet going in the back, so I was like,
yeah,
the mullet got to me. Yeah.
No, you're doing good. You're doing good.
At least I'm well lit today, guys. I spent some time trying to get my lighting right. So.
Yep. All right, Russ, start with the pre-show.
So, Mike, quiz for you.
Mm-hmm.
On this day in 1996 in baseball, what happened?
May 14th, 1996. Is it Yankees related?
I'm not saying. You got 10 seconds.
I'll take a guess and say Dwight Gooden's no-hitter with the Yankees.
Dwight Gooden's no-hitter with the Yankees.
I honestly did not know that for
It's
sure.
a good guess. And it's another one where for a long time when the Mets didn't have a no-hitter, you would either watch or wake up. Like Seaver pitched a no-hitter with the Reds. He woke up to that one day. He never pitched one with the Mets. He had all these one-hitters and two-hitters. And same with Gooden. I actually ran into Gooden in spring training and chatted with him. Brought over a young fan to him for him to meet. And, yeah, I mean, it's amazing considering how unhittable Dwight Gooden was with the Mets, but still couldn't pitch a no-hitter. And then in 96, he was clearly not the same pitcher, but he pitched a no-hitter. And that was just the Yankee thing that just would happen with Mets going to the Yankees.
And the funny thing is, the Yankees won the World Series that year for the first time since '78. And he wasn't even on the playoff roster.
No.
Yeah, I think his ERA was in the mid-4s. He was like basically an innings-eating type pitcher, and he didn't even make the cut. I think he still gets a World Series ring because he was with the team for
he was there the whole regular season.
Right. So, but it was just I mean, it
depends. The team decides what to do with that because I don't think George Foster got one with the Mets because they got rid of him before the playoffs too. But I also don't think they gave him one either. So
yeah, he wasn't well liked in that locker room.
No.
Now, hopefully, Eck hears this as I think he's going to get his take a boost. Okay. Normally, I really don't care about like the crap that we see on TMZ or the Inquirer, the critiques of celebrities and that kind of stuff. But this really got me today. And I'm flipping through online in the morning just to see, and there was a lot of criticism of Adele. Because Adele has lost 45 pounds. And I saw a picture of her, and she looks fantastic.
She does look great.
She looks great. She looks healthy. And all of a sudden, people are basically reverse shaming her.
Why are they criticizing Adele?
They're criticizing her because they think she's lost too much weight, and now she looks anorexic.
You know what? This is now a new thing because yesterday, a former Yankee, CC Sabathia, showed his weight loss, and he's obviously working out a lot. His arms look cut. Yeah. He's probably lost 30 or more pounds. Yes. And Mike Francesa apparently went on the air and ripped the guy. And it's like, I don't understand why you're ripping someone for getting healthy. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
There's the pot calling the kettle black, that fat load. But no, this is the thing. Sabathia, throughout his career, when he lost weight, he didn't pitch as well. So he was more comfortable being heavier because he threw better. Now, that may be illogical, but now his career's over with. He's had some health issues. Yeah. He had an alcohol problem. He stopped drinking. He looks fantastic now. Right. Adele, I saw pictures of her like she's on a beach. She looks great.
Yeah, I mean, people have too much time on their hands. Like,
they do. Yeah.
I mean, it's so ridiculous. I mean, we shouldn't be shaming people. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of people getting putting on weight because of the quarantine and them getting yelled at.
Look, we've all put on a couple pounds during the quarantine. It's the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're home a lot. You get there's less exercise. It's just it's tricky.
Yeah, I'm going for, well, I don't know if I'm actually going to the office for my primary care visit next week. I'm fully prepared for the doctor to be yelling at me because I'm sure my blood sugar level is up and things are, because I usually work out 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And I haven't been able to do that, and all this other stuff. It's like, I mean, that's going to be across the board. People staying home.
I mean, you don't even have the power to eat the exact same food. So,
right. And I think it's ridiculous that people are doing this kind of stuff. It's just a bunch of jealous people out there.
I mean, she's a fantastic talent. I'm like I said, I'm not a big particular fan of her music, but she's got a great voice, and she looks fantastic, and she feels
she's really talented.
Why criticize her?
I think it's it's just. Dumb.
I mean, people were ripping me for having my picture on a shirt. I mean, I don't know.
Excellent. Excellent. Give me 1 second. Right there.
I can hang up now.
People were ripping Russ this morning because of a picture that he posted in his mid-teens.
I saw it. I can say it because I am an MOT. It's the Jufro, which I had one also. Trust me.
But mine wasn't natural.
I told my kid, I said, your dad had hair then and used to break combs in his hair to try to comb it.
Mine was not natural though, Jim.
But somebody
mine was like snap.
Yeah.
Somebody made the Epstein.
Yeah, that was pretty accurate.
I see. I thought Horshack was.
No, it was more Epsteinish, I think, at that point. But I used to get Richard Dreyfuss a lot when he was younger.
Yeah, Dreyfuss, I could see.
Yeah, I can see that one.
Yeah, I used to get that a lot.
You mean from like Close Encounters of the Third?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, from early on. Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So that one I used to get quite a bit, but it's all good.
Yep. Okay.
All right, let's get going here.
Yeah.
14th. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, why not?
What the hell?
We're going to talk about the Russian hockey team today, guys. It's going to be fun.
All right.
Yeah.
And maybe Sweden. Maybe Sweden too again.
I guess right.
All right, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, May 14th, 2020.
I'm Michael Lagello, and yesterday the sun appeared in Buffalo, and today it's gone.
There you go.
I'm Jan Levine, and we're about to hit 80 degrees potentially in New York over the weekend.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, same here, and it's a nice day. Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast where everybody seems to want to tell you something about themselves during their introductions. Now, this is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday, the comings and goings in the hockey world. And yes, we are here, still going. And today we're going to get into some more Olympic news. We have some news to start with, though. I want to start with mine because I did have a good conversation. And, somebody I was actually watching the show yesterday and was wondering about why we were saying, that why hasn't the NHL said anything yet about the draft, And then, through the discussion, I basically said, well, listen, the way we like to do things, we like to do it all at once. Their concept is to come out with a big press release explaining everything they're going to do, like the draft, the season, when camps will open, when they'll close, when the season. So what I was told was
the penalty on Arizona too.
No, that's not that, but just they're not. They went. They're in good news. Good news stuff. So here we go. So this is the what, and this can all change because everything is, of course, fluid. But this is what I expect them to announce pretty soon, and that would be that the draft will be in June, around the middle of June, like around the 15th. The draft weekend will be followed by the opening of camps. So they'll have the draft, and then camps will open on that Monday, and then you'll have 2 weeks of camp, only 2 weeks of camp, followed by. And only for the 24 teams, and then jumping right into the 24 team playoff format, which is definitely the one that they're leaning towards. That could still change, but it looks like they do realize that the regular season is just too much.
And from what I read, Eck, and that first round to eliminate down to 16 is going to be best of 3. So if it's best of 3, that makes up to the rights holders the number of games that they're missing from the regular season and games of more consequence. So I think they would probably like that better than just finishing out playing Detroit versus Ottawa.
I think they'd like that better. The news I got about the draft deck was that they're going to give, the league is giving the teams roughly a month. So whenever they announce it, the draft will probably be a month later than that.
Makes sense. If it's announced tomorrow, which I think it could be, you're looking at the 15th to the 15th. Right. So
yeah,
I don't know that it'll be announced tomorrow, but I think that makes sense. They would give them a month. Now this could still, like I said, I'm putting this as an E4. this is why they moved things up to have that meeting earlier to try to get more ducks in a row so they could actually do this all at once, because their concept is no league is, I guess Major League Baseball is do they come out?
They're not even close. The owners have an agreement and the players are fighting them, and they're not even close.
So they would like to be.
But the news yesterday about that, Russ, was more encouraging in terms of them working together. So
was
it after Blake Snell said
what Blake Snell said? I don't think so.
No. Yeah, well, see, that's one guy. If you take Devin Dubnik's comments about going to neutral site games, that would tell me that the NHL is not all in lockstep. But there's always an outlier.
No, but Dubnik's willing to play. There's more major leaguers that are saying they don't want to play. He's not the only one. He's just the most recent one. So I might disagree with you.
There will be 4 cities that they will go to. The quarantine in 4 places for the divisions for 4 divisions. Quarantining divisions in the same place makes playoffs will be different. Obviously, they'll be all divisional, which is interesting because you won't have a situation like where you have any of the crossover divisional type things, which makes sense too. I mean, just keep everybody together for this. I think that does not. It kind of hurts like teams like the Maple Leafs. And, well, I don't know. I'm not sure who it hurts.
Well, are you saying it's going to be the 3 through 6? As they talked about a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That would that would mean a first round series against Buffalo, which they'll lose. So
which would be fantastic, right? I mean, that would be
but the whole thing of the Buffalo Toronto thing would be the crowds at First Niagara, or sorry, at KeyBank Center and Scotiabank and the Niagara corridor rivalry. It'll be played in a neutral site with no fans. So I'm sure the fan bases will be excited about it, and the bragging rights will be through the roof. But it won't have the same impact as it did in '99 when they faced in the Eastern Conference Final.
I will say this: I don't think, and I love Scott Burnside. I don't think it will be in Carolina because their numbers are going up because they never really tested and they're only in phase 1. To me, I don't care if they have rinks there. That is more important than having the rinks. There's plenty of places that have, a practice rink with a couple of pads and a regular rink. There's a lot of those places.
And those rinks are not going to be ready till early July, supposedly. So
So I don't think it's going to happen there. I still think, and what X said a while ago made the most sense. A few places with colder weather makes sense because, as an example, if you wanted to hold the Stanley Cup in Minnesota, that would make sense because it would be easier to keep the ice there.
Although Minnesota is blowing up in terms of infection rate as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's either like extremely cold or extremely hot in a way because like the hot is supposed to be better with the virus. So there's the concept of Arizona and Edmonton look like we talked about yesterday. Look to be 2 of the 4, but that could still change. There's still
the travel on that doesn't make sense. It's like, why am I? And again, you having to go from air travel from Edmonton to Florida. That's not a good trip.
Yeah, and
I mean, there's not really any air travel at all. I mean, involved in it. I mean, honestly,
how are they getting there then?
Well, you all get there. I mean, they all have chartered flights. That's fine. And then,
well, yeah, but I mean, again, it's not a great way to travel.
Well, no, chartered flights are going to be fine with the teams. I mean, you're just going to have the teams. You're going to have everything. I mean, I had a friend who recently did actually have to fly somewhere, and he said it was as nightmarish as you could possibly imagine. And the thing is, he brought it up that was really interesting. He said, it doesn't matter when the government opens up things and all that stuff. You're going to have, it's going to be a long time. You realize when you're in a situation like this, it's going to be a long time until we're back to normal, just from your own sense of like nervousness, just your general touch of something where he's like, I'm constantly cleaning things, and the flight was more crowded than it should have been, and they definitely instead of telling
here's an example, like it's 5 hours and 18 minutes
right next to a guy for 3 hours on a flight. Imagine that.
3 hours, but Edmonton to Florida is 5 hours and 18 minutes.
Yeah, it's a team, and they're all quarantined. They're all going to be tested before this. They're all going to be,
No, but why would you want to do it? You want to get in a maximum amount of games. Why in the world, in this era right now, would you want to be in the air for almost 6 hours?
Right. That's what
you're only playing one. You're only going to one city to play the whole round. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, to get to the Final Four, you're going to be in Edmonton for the whole thing. So you fly there, you're there. I mean, that's it.
So you're there for how long?
You're there for probably
a couple weeks.
I mean, you could be there for 3 or 4 weeks.
All right.
I mean, once you get there, you're set in, and
okay.
If you lose, of course, you're gone, but then you go home, and that's it. I mean, but if you're still there, I heard the best of 3 as well. Mike, I did hear that. I like that. Right. More games are better. I know my whole thing that I've said before, but that's another. My want is to have more games. So let's play more games and let's have them. Let's bring it on.
Well, one of the other things, and I don't know whether Toronto is logical or a long shot when it comes to being one of the hubs, but I did see a report today that obviously the government of Ontario has started to open things up last week in terms of letting players get together at practice facilities. That was more for the Raptors than the NHL because the NHL hasn't approved moving to phase 2. But the rates of infection in Ontario have gone down precipitously over the last couple weeks, and that things may start to open up in Ontario. And if that's the case, then it makes it more of a viable option because of all the rinks that they have and all the hotels and everything else.
Yeah,
Toronto could be an option.
Well, they have 2 rinks in Edmonton, apparently, right? That are really solid, and they've got other rinks too in Edmonton. They have
lots of practice facilities. Is Northlands Coliseum still in existence, or?
It is.
Okay, so they have both the new building and the old building.
Timothy S. in the chat room, have I been to Edmonton? Yes, I have been to Edmonton. I was there for Game 6 of the Edmonton-Carolina series, and
I haven't had the pleasure. So
I loved it. Oh my gosh, it was so much. It was so cool. Flying into Edmonton, it was a hellish thing to get there. I flew 24 straight hours from Carolina.
It's been years since I've been there. I haven't been to the new place yet. I was at Northlands.
I was at Northlands too.
Yeah, but I was only there really for the outdoor game. So we walked through Northlands. They just used it for an interviewing area. That's all.
Yeah, no, it was, and I brought it up before, but the coolest thing about flying into Edmonton when I did, and it was June, because obviously it was Stanley Cup Finals, but so the rinks were closed, but the thing that you do when you fly across in America and you fly into a town like St. Louis, you see a ton of baseball fields and stuff like that. When flying into Edmonton, you saw a ton of rinks, there was no ice on them, obviously, but you saw all the backyard rinks that people have, and just because you saw the boards line and all that stuff, it's just so cool to see that. And I was there in June when it was almost 24 hours of daylight practically. So I remember after the game, which ended at 11 o'clock at night or something like that, it was still bright as day outside till midnight. It was crazy. It was fun. Yeah,
and let me just touch on this for 1 second, because I didn't read the Blake Snell comments until just a few minutes ago. If you don't want to play and you don't want to make your millions of dollars that you have in your contract, you have every right to do that, but don't expect the team to pay you.
No, but that's not it, Mike. He's only saying that because he doesn't want to take the risk. He's basically saying, if I'm only getting half a paycheck, I already reported to spring training. Now I have to do that again and play. It's not worth it to him.
Right,
in the bank.
I respect his right to say that, but
you think he's the only one?
No, I'm sure. And you know what? If there are others, then you don't play either, but you're not getting paid.
Well, they know that they could afford to not be paid. That's right. The point.
I will bet you that it'll be a percentage, but it won't be a large percentage. I'll bet you it'll be 10, 12%, something like that. And if star players who've made millions don't want to risk getting infected. You got to remember, everybody that's been infected, that's been in pro sports, from Rudy Gobert to Von Miller to the NHL players who were never identified, none of them had serious implications. They're all younger people who didn't have health
yet. Remember,
and there's been several athletes that have said that the risk that they have is not so much to them, but to the coaches and everybody else surrounding them because of the age and the demographics that they're in.
Right.
And you also have to factor in this whole thing. Look, a lot of it gets back to money, right? The MLB, and Russ and I have had lots of conversations on our severe dislike for Rob Manfred here. He basically is attempting to put in a cap structure again and reduce the pay, right? And they are the ones to a certain extent taking the material risks by playing because they're the ones with the potential for getting infected. And the 48% revenue sharing, I don't think is going to fly. The owners, I figured, would ratify it. I think the players are very adamantly against it, led by Player Association head Tony Clark.
And Jan, I have a feeling that this whole exercise is basically been done to, if MLB doesn't play, the bad guy is the players.
Sure.
Because right now if you take a poll, everybody, so I'd say a sizable portion are supporting of the owners because they see that the owners want to play, but and they don't sympathize with the players.
But bring it back to hockey. I'm not going to be shocked if there are players that say, after they find out how it's going to be, that say, I don't want to do this. I won't be shocked at all. The other thing is, did they talk about social distancing rules yet?
No, not that I heard of. As far as the game goes itself, you mean the actual game?
The actual game, because we saw the quotes from Daly yesterday, and I guess a reporter yesterday said, well, if it's not going to be, if we're not going to have it the same way, then it's not real hockey. And of course, women's hockey and fans of women's hockey got mad because those are the way the rules in women's hockey, and it's true. Yeah. Just because you might modify the rules, to me, that doesn't mean it's not real hockey. It just means
I don't think they're going to modify anything.
I think they should.
That's the impression I get. I don't think they're going. I could think the concept is we're doing all this testing, we're doing all this stuff,
exactly,
to make sure that we can have.
Okay, but I'm going to give you another flip side for the exactly, Mike, and that is there was somebody, because I looked up Carolina when I wanted to see about the COVID, and there was somebody who tested positive. They said they all of a sudden they were fine, negative, got tested again a month or two later, was positive again. So again, now because this is mutating, just because you get a positive test, it doesn't mean that's going to be 100% guaranteed that you can't get anything. So I think there should be some modification.
The modification could be, like I said, and I'm going to write about this later today. The concept of like wearing a full face shield, that's possible. That's like the only modification I've heard.
And that makes sense. If they do that, it does eliminate a lot of the other things.
Some players are going to be upset about that, and I think that will be a factor too, because I think that you've seen this be an issue already, right?
Players get upset if they have to wear a face shield. Players were upset having to wear helmets at all. Like, I know they get used to things. It's really the reason they get upset. It's really more out of just because they're used to it, not because they can't do it.
Right? I'm wondering if there was a way of doing a face shield with like some kind of filters involved in it, that where you're breathing in filter, your air is being filtered.
Yeah, you're
like a Darth Vader one.
You're gonna wear scuba.
Not Darth Vader, but like where the air holes are. Like if you could.
Yeah, I mean that's the point they made a couple of days ago when talking about full face shields. There's air spaces you're going to be breathing in, so
you're still breathing air. But it's like, but the idea is like the sweat and things like that.
But you're not going to be breathing in the moist air, Mike. That's the worry.
Yeah, well, if you can put in the air spots down here, if you could somehow make it that there's some kind of thin mesh that's like a filtering type thing, right? It's going to make it hard to breathe, which is going to be because anybody who walked around with a face mask on in a supermarket knows that if you're in there for too long, you start to asphyxiate yourself.
Yeah.
But I think players.
I was wearing a pillowcase a couple weeks ago. I was barely able to breathe.
No, it's really. I mean, I actually had to leave the market that I was in the other day and like step outside for a second. And went in the outdoor. People were all pissed off at me or whatever. And I'm like, I just got to step out here. I'm like gonna pass out. I just had to step out, take my mask off, and breathe air because we don't have like the really nice, of course, the N95 mask. So I'm wearing two of these regular ones.
Well, here's the other thing though, and baseball has already said this. Like, you can't spit anymore in baseball, and they were talking about no high-fiving, and so. Hockey, they have gloves. That's fine. We're not worried about that. But they do spit on the bench, and you probably should not do that anymore.
I could see them. Yeah, they shouldn't do that. And there are already a lot of teams because of the flu already have like their water bottles separated and stuff like that. They're not sharing water bottles. That's something that you got to do. I could see like the idea of taking fighting of not allowing fighting just because. Of dropping your gloves and having like bare hands.
Because you don't want to take off the gloves at this point.
You're going to be wearing a face shield. It does a full face. What the heck does fighting do? Like, what point is it? Like, how are you going to
see there you go. See, this is the thing that I'm worried about here, because like in Major League Baseball, we've heard the implementation of the DH in the National League, and people hate that idea, and people believe that because that's going to happen, that the pitcher hitting will never come back.
It's not going to come back,
right? So. Extrapolate that to hockey. If you're going to ban fighting for this upcoming season because of everything, then you're never going to see fighting again. That's why I'm pushing back on this. I think
might see it. It's just going to be a lot more severe of a penalty.
Yeah, well, fine, but don't ban it.
Well, Mike, it's like anything else. If X says fighting is banned tomorrow and there's a fight in a game, they're probably getting suspended for, like 25 games.
Yeah.
That's just as
well. And I think the bigger issue is what happens with the stick infractions and the stick work that we saw years ago. You're going to start seeing that's going to be potentially a possible issue.
No question about it. But you know what? If they're wearing a different mask and the stick infractions are going to be what they are going to increase. But the other things are a risk. The minute you take your gloves off, you're definitely more at risk.
If you're wearing a full face visor.
Yeah, but nobody's going to fight with a full face visor anyhow.
I will give you.
Deal. I mean, you obviously can still break someone's wrist with gloves and stuff like that. There's no question.
The over under is, I would say, a year on somebody if they will go to full face shields. Somebody doing a Chris Simon on Ryan Holvig. It'll be the over-under is a year. I think it'll be under because if you're wearing full face shields, it gives carte blanche to players. They basically taking baseball swings at face.
Well, I don't think it automatically does, Mike. I think sometimes, and they'll just deal with it if it happens. But you have to operate from a position of safety rather than, hey, our game's great, we don't need to change anything. You can't just automatically fall back to that when the world has changed.
Yeah, you really can't. I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, Russ had mentioned in our little private chat, and it's not very newsworthy, but just I think we're going to probably see more of these signings before the beginning of play again, and then before next season. Teams signing younger players to not just like 1-year deals, but 2-3-year bridge deals. And the Leafs signed Adam Brooks today, who basically had a cup of coffee, 7 games in the NHL this year, a 2-year deal. But I think the reason for deals like this more than anything right now is because of expansion. And if you look at the Leaf situation, they have Matthews, they have Tavares, they have Kerfoot locked up the middle. Their fourth line center right now, Spets is probably going to re-sign with the team. They have Freddie Gauthier, who's played with them for a few years. You have to expose players who played a certain number of games, like happened before the Vegas expansion. And a guy like Gauthier, who has played 3 full seasons with the Leafs, he will qualify. They signed Brooks because Brooks is a player who they like, who they think can fit in the NHL, and who can fill in and step in for Gauthier if Gauthier is the one who gets claimed. I don't know if he'll get claimed because I don't particularly think he's that great of a player, but he would at least qualify for those limitations. And teams are going to put themselves in these positions to have these players that, some teams, the last time expansion happened, they had to go out and trade for players that fit the qualifications because they didn't have enough players to expose.
Right.
And that's going to be I think that's going to be the case this year. They're going to lock up these players to make sure that they're available to be exposed for Seattle.
Yeah, I think so. I think they're going to have to. And then you're going to, that strategy's always existed, but I think you're going to have to do it.
Well, here's something interesting, too. I'm noticing on NHL.com, they interviewed Leo Komarov, who's in Finland. Like, again, this is another reason, why I think they do need to speed up the news cycle here because, I think there's more players than we realize that are going to have to cross back over.
Oh, yeah. No, there's a lot of players that aren't back yet. They said that. That's why, the original plan was to get everybody back by the 15th and then start the beginning of June. But I think now they're realizing that, get back between the 15th and the beginning of June and start the middle of June. That's kind of where they're at now, I think.
I think Brooks wrote about it where they thought about players would meet at a centralized location in Europe.
Yeah.
Potentially charter a flight back as opposed to going commercial, right? And that being a way to avoid the spread of the virus if you're able to, keep them together separately.
Makes a ton of sense to do that. I think that I know some teams are trying to work that out now. There's no question about that.
By one thing I just also I know before we get to the Olympic teams, right? So we talked yesterday about those players who were on Team North America. They're doing a thing on NHL.com on Facebook, a reunion of Team North America from 4 years ago. I didn't say who's attending, but it's kind of interesting to kind of take a look at what has happened to those players over the last 4 years. And obviously McDavid and Matthews and those guys have taken that next step into superstars, but some of the other, quote unquote, maybe lesser lights on that team that people may not focus as much on, what's become of some of them.
One player that really has been like the biggest disappointment since then for me is Brandon Saad. Like, I realized at the point that tournament happened,
he was a veteran player on that team.
I know he was a veteran player on that team, and I really thought that Saad was like going to be an absolute knockdown star. You know,
it would have been if the league didn't get faster. It was his skating that did him in.
Yeah, and then he got traded to Columbus and then back to Chicago. I mean, it was. Yeah. The funny thing is, you remember when that tournament took place, Matthews had been drafted 3 months before. He hadn't played an NHL game, and he was speculating. He was basically on the fourth line when the tournament started, and he ended up playing on the wing with McDavid by the end.
Yeah, it didn't last long. You could see it. I mean, like, I was at that tournament. I covered that tournament. It's one of the more fun things I've done, and you could see that McDavid wasn't going to stay on the fourth line. It was just so obvious right away when he stepped on the ice. You know how good he was. And it was fun I hadn't seen him play like you guys had seen him play live before that. I hadn't. That was my first time experiencing him live.
But that was Nathan McKinnon's coming out party. I mean,
what I loved about that tournament more than any other thing about that tournament was, well, first of all, that team, like we said, how fast they were, how skilled they were, and if Matt Murray doesn't get hurt, I think they win the gold medal flat out.
We do need to remind, like, Ty Anderson. 10 years ago today, actually, the Flyers came back and beat the Bruins.
10 years
we were covering that act.
Yep, 10 years ago today. Actually, there's a funny story about that Game 7. Okay, so 10 years ago today was the Flyers completed their comeback of being down 3-0 to the Bruins. I was performing that. I had a show, so I had been to a bunch of games in that series, but I couldn't go to Game 7 because my band was performing. We had a show, and so I was. It was Game 7 was in Boston, so the show time for our band to go on was like around 8:00. There was an opening act, and we went on at 8. And I definitely didn't want to know what happened in the game because I was taping it. You know, when I was like, but at the same time, we're like, we're not gonna be able to. This is too exciting. We can't. So we're watching the game backstage. Captain EO and I, because he's in the band too. You know, so we're back there. We're watching the game start while the opening act is playing. And the Flyers fall down like really early.
3-0.
They go down 3-0, and then we go on. Then we go on stage. So it's like we're like, so depressed. Like we're like thinking, oh man, this is going to be so exciting. And we go out, it's 3-0 before we hit the stage, and now we're not going to know what happened until the end, because basically our set's going to go for most of the rest of the game, which it does. So we're out there 3-0, and it's not a bar. It's an intimate small place called the Teen Angel in Philadelphia, which is like no longer there, but it has like there's no TVs, it's a real intimate, like living room type setting. So there's no one knows what's going on in the game unless they're checking their phones or whatever. We told people not to check their phones, but we didn't want to know what was happening. So, even though they were down, all we know is they're losing. So then we come back, we do our show, we go off the stage before the encore. So we go back in the dressing room for a few seconds, to pretend that we're like, the ridiculousness of an encore. We're back there. We're standing back there, waiting to get called back on stage for the encore. And I've got my laptop, playing off of my Sling box at home. This is like 10 years ago, still technology. You couldn't just stream every game. But I've got this thing going on in the corner, and the Flyers have at that point have tied it. And then we see them score a goal. We see them score the goal that gives them the lead while we're back between the encore and the regular show. Go back to do the encore, like all fired up now. We're like, this is awesome. This is crazy. And then that night, my wife and I, after the show, we hit the town and stayed out till about 5 a.m. That's the hardest because the whole city was just so.
Yeah, this game was in Philly. Game 7 was not in Boston.
Game 7 was in Boston.
No, it was in Philly. I'm looking at this box score.
Was it?
Yeah, because I covered it.
No, Boston was a home place. That Philly team was the team that made the playoffs at the end of the year.
Wait, hold on. Maybe you're right, mate. This may not be the right game. Hold on.
Definitely in Boston. I'm positive.
And I didn't cover that one. But yeah, you know what? It didn't. I got to look at it. I think you're right.
I'll find out for sure.
No, that's the series. No, that was because that was the year the Flyers got in, beating the Rangers. So they were the last.
Yeah. We know. I know. Thank you for reminding me. I was there with you.
No, it was in Boston. You're right.
In Boston, and so after the show, like the show ends, the Flyers have won, and my wife and I just like, as a standard procedure for me when we play in a city close by, we get a hotel in the city and just go out after the show. So we went out after the show, and it was one of those really awesome nights to remember, like just because everybody was so fired up in the city, like because our show was our show was in Philly. Everybody was all like, it was really fun. So
you know, it was the website I was on. It was showing the completed series, but then it said next game, and I realized, oh, wrong game. But here's the interesting, funny thing. Eck, who started the series for the Flyers and net?
You know, that's this is good. This is a good question because I know it ended up with
Boucher.
Boucher was the guy who
Boucher wasn't
it? Wasn't he the guy who returned? Didn't he finish it too?
No, Leighton finished it.
Leighton finished. Okay, right.
And then Leighton was the Stanley Cup goal.
The turning point in that series did happen in Philly in Game 4. And I was with this. We were there for this, and I remember this was when Mike Richards took out Krejci.
Yeah, the Krejci injury was the big thing.
He hit him with a really clean open ice check in Game 4 with the Flyers down 3-0 and down in that game too, and looked like they were just going to get swept out. Krejci gets leveled and taken out. You know, Boston's all pissed off, and that really was like that was like the turning point in that game.
Yeah, Krejci was killing them that whole series.
You remember that Game 4? I believe the Flyers won in overtime. That's how crazy this whole comeback was. I think the Flyers.
Was that Simone Gagne who scored that?
Simone Gagne, yeah. I'm pretty sure Gagne, which was like, this is old Gagne. I mean, this is Gagne.
He was still really good then.
Put this in context with the anniversary from yesterday. Boston in a 4-year span.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they won the Cup in 2011 with Tim Thomas standing on his head, but they went 7 games with Montreal. They went 7 games with Vancouver. Didn't they go 7 games with Tampa that year, Russ?
The Rangers went 7 with Tampa.
No. In 2011.
Oh, 15. Yeah.
I think they did. I think that's
so they went 7 games in 3 of
the series. I think
3 of the series.
Which I think they played the most games ever, or tied the most games ever, whatever. No one's ever gone 7 fully.
But okay, so it was a major league choke job in 2010 where they lose to the Flyers up 3-0. Then in 2012, after they win the Cup, they lose to Washington in the first round, which a lot of people thought was a major league choke job because Washington was not as good a team as Boston. And they were 11 minutes away from losing in Game 7 to a team that was vastly worse than them in Toronto. So had they lost that series, or had Nathan Horton not scored in Game 7 of 2011 against Montreal, Boston would have the reputation of being the Atlanta Braves of the NHL. They would have been choke artists.
Well, and at that point, fans were down on Rask too, which they started to.
Well, it was still Thomas at that point.
No, Rask was in there. In
2013 was Rask, yes.
Yeah.
2010 was Thomas.
2010 was Rask. It said.
No. 2010 was Thomas. I'm positive.
I mean, Rask might have played some games in there. But
Rask played the last game.
Did he play the last game?
Yeah.
Maybe that's because Thomas had been. I wonder why, if he was hurt or it was just playing badly because they lost 3 games in a row.
Let's see. I'll look it up.
Remembering that, I recently saw that when the Bruins had that 2011, they did a Zoom thing. I saw some of this,
and Thomas was on it.
Yeah,
Thomas, this 2000, and it was interesting. The 2011 thing. When asked about why that team won that Stanley Cup in 2011, many of them pointed to the loss to the Flyers in 2010 as being like a real, wake up point to them, and realizing that what you had to do to finish out a series and all that kind of stuff, how you could never take anything for granted. And they said if they don't get beaten in 2010, they don't. A lot of those Bruins they're never going to win that 2011 Stanley Cup. Which is very typically true in these situations. I mean, that's what happened. Teams have to learn how to lose. We talked about.
And I know Dean Youngblood is saying it to piss me off in the chat, but he is right in one respect. The Bills losing in that first Super Bowl to the Giants propelled them to get back to the Super Bowl the next 3 years because they were pissed off that they lost to the Giants. Had they won against the Giants, they probably don't go back to 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So there is something.
Never figured out how to win.
Yeah, there is something to that kind of motivation, but to look at it from another perspective, like again, with Toronto has had so many disheartening losses, and they've never really used it as impetus to succeed going forward. So it works with some teams if they have the right personnel and the right belief system, I guess. But with other teams, it doesn't work.
Yeah. That's really true. I mean, obviously, the way you react to adversity says everything about you in the world, in life. In general, that I think is just a general statement, and it's definitely true with athletes. But my motto has always been, It's how you react to the difficult things that proves what you are. You know, that's really the reality. Like right now, like this is tough on people, and how you react to this is huge. You know, so you really see teams that does play out with teams, and sometimes
Rask played 6 and 7 so far. Eck.
I'm wondering if Thomas was either hurt. I think Thomas was pulled.
He probably did get pulled at some point. I'm trying to find where.
Yeah.
No, he didn't play game 4 either.
Maybe he was hurt.
Completely. He may have been hurt
going into those playoffs. I don't remember.
I'll do some digging for tomorrow.
I could have sworn he played at least in the beginning of that series.
Well, I'm looking at game 1 because he didn't play 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah, game 1. Check that out because that would be the key. All right, so while Russ is checking out, we're going to get into the Russian Olympic team, and this is a really interesting Olympic team because the Russians have had a real problem since that we've seen, that we're really starting to see now, I think, since the good old days of communism. You know, like communism, although it repressed the society relentlessly, was very good at putting hockey teams together. And very good at like building up the best players.
He didn't play that whole series, actually.
Okay, so that must have just going with Rask, or Thomas was hurt.
Yeah. Probably.
So anyway, this Russian team is interesting because they're not very strong, in my opinion, at all, and especially up the middle where they have huge issues. Now, this is my list so far. I'll bring it up here again so we can see it on here because I was building a blog out of this. So it's going to look a little bit strange, but it's not too bad. But you can see here. Let me bring this up. So my team so far, and all right, so make this bigger. The forwards start off with Ovechkin, Malkin, and Kucherov. And Kucherov. I mean, that's an obviously fantastic thing. You know, you're not going to beat that. That's a great first line, no two ways about it. But after that,
let me insert. And Rask played every game.
All right. Okay. So
he played 6 games against Buffalo and 7 games against Philly. So Thomas must have been hurt earlier.
Okay. Yeah. So Richard Petrosky, Thomas suffered a drop off in form, posting just a 17, 18, and 8 record that year.
Okay.
Albeit still with a strong goals against average of 2.56. He did not play at all in the playoffs. It's just Rask played all the games. So
thanks.
That's interesting. Thanks very much, Richard. We appreciate that. So here's my top line of Ovechkin, Malkin, and Kucherov is Kucherov. Why can't I say his name right now? What am I doing wrong?
I don't know.
I'm losing my mind. Sorry, that's all. It's not like he's a big player or anything, Nikita Kucherov.
No.
All right, the second line of Panarin and Tarasenko, and obviously Panarin, you got there's your top 4. Those guys are just ridiculous. Those are all 4 superstars, flat out superstars. Okay, but then after that, you have a big drop off. I am not the biggest Tarasenko fan. Okay, he's a good player, but he is wildly inconsistent.
What?
No, Eck.
He's been hurt. Oh, come on now. You're not going to tell me that
35 goal scorer.
Tarasenko is a top 10 NHL winger.
Oh,
yeah.
My gosh.
Yes.
No way.
Easily.
No.
Heck, you're at number 3-1 here.
That's insane. I mean, I have so many fans. I have good friends that are Blues fans that will totally disagree with you on that. And they're Blues.
They're clueless. Really? I mean, honestly, he was an important cog in them, almost as important as O'Reilly to winning the Stanley Cup last year.
I don't think so at all. What were his stats in the Stanley Cup last year?
I'll check them right now.
He was not very good in the Stanley Cup last year. Fine, in the whole playoffs in general. And he has had moments in his career where he has disappeared.
Yeah, that was years ago.
I don't know.
Last year, 26 games, he had 11 goals and 6 assists for 17 points.
Yeah, I mean, he had 11 goals.
11 goals in 26 games.
Yeah, he was second in goals. He had more goals than O'Reilly, and he was 1 behind Jaden Schwartz. So he's their second leading goal scorer.
How about points wise? Where is he in the points for that team?
Point wise, he was fourth.
Okay. All right, so I'm not going to say he's all right. Okay, I'll give you that. I think he's inconsistent. I think he disappears at times still.
Okay. I mean,
he gets hurt a lot. Thank you, Funky Coccasini. He gets hurt a lot too. All right, but let's just forget about. All right, I'll give you him. All right, so you got 5 players that are legitimate stars on this team. 5 players that are all stars. Okay, I'll call Tarasenko an all-star. I don't know if he's ever been an all-star.
He is. He's an all-star.
He is.
Has he been on the all-star team?
Yes.
Oh my God.
3 or 4 times at least.
I don't know. I didn't have a good night's sleep last night, but maybe I just get all this time traveling I'm doing.
He single-handedly beat Canada. He's definitely on this team.
Until he
did have a good World Cup.
Until he had the shoulder injury this year. And by the way, with a sore shoulder, he was at a point per game pace. He had 5 years of 30 goals or more.
Okay. All right. Fine. I'll give you
so he's a star. I'll take him.
My Blues friends complain about him constantly.
Well, that's just because.
Well, you need to get better Blues fans then.
So right now,
all right,
you have five.
Five players that are stars on this team. All right, I'll give you Tarasenko. I'm not going to call him a superstar.
I think
Svechnikov is on that border right now.
I think Kaprizov, even though he hasn't played a game in the NHL, is also there. A guy like, now you have the 4 centers listed here. A guy like Shipachyov, who led the KHL in scoring last year with 65 points, will be on this team.
Okay.
So I think, you maybe have Barbashev as your 4th line center. Shipachyov could be as high as your number 2 center.
Yeah, I mean, Barbashev was a 4th line center on a Stanley Cup team. So why can't he?
I'm not a huge fan of Shipachyov now.
No, I mean, based on what happened.
I mean, either Grigorenko could be your 4th line center. Shipachyov could be
I think Podkolzin, if they do what we said with Barbashev, I could see them bringing in Podkolzin, who's got a lot more offense than a Grigorenko, who they probably soured on it.
Right. Okay. All right. But let's look at this forward group beyond that. I mean, we looked at Canada, we looked at the U.S. already. Mm-hmm. This is not comparable. Do we agree with that?
It's a step below, but it's not.
The top line is as good as any top line could ever be.
Right.
I'm not going to say that. I mean, there are 3 of the top 10 players.
I think, and I'll be anxious to get Russ and Jan's opinion on this. I think that the Russians will probably have to structure a team sort of like the U.S. did in 2010, where they had a top 6, and then they actually brought in a 3rd line and a 4th line to play a 3rd line and a 4th line type role instead of what Canada always does, and it basically chooses the top 12 best players and has them augment their game to fit the roles that they need. I mean, guys like a guy like Barbashev can definitely play a 4th line role. A guy like Ilya Mikheyev, who's only got 1 year in the NHL from the Leafs, a fast, big player, he could fit a 4th line role for the Russian team.
All right. Well,
I'm also going to give you a name, Ek, that in normal circumstances, we would say, no, it's not going to happen. But for the Russians, I could see them bringing Datsuk if he's still playing. I can.
Yeah, somebody brought that up in the chat room, and I could see that too.
As a power play specialist?
Anything, whatever he'll do. They don't care.
To be there. I mean, if he's still playing, and I don't know, what was his year like this year in the KHL?
I got it.
He did okay.
I think your team is better than you give it credit for, right? I think Dadonov is a pretty good winger.
Yeah,
I think Gusev last year showed that he clearly belongs in the NHL.
Yeah.
With his play for the Devils, I mean, Kaprizov has been talked about as a top prospect for the last several years. So it may not have the name recognition of Canada or the U.S., but I still think it's a pretty solid line in terms of the quality and talent associated. Couple of outliers, but overall, I think it's a pretty good team in terms of offensive.
Yeah, and I think they would. Datsuk was a half point a game, so I think they would add him.
Yeah, they would bring him then.
And I do think Kravtsov won't make it, and I do think they would put possibly Podkolzin ahead of him because I can see.
Talking about Radulov too, right? About Radulov, I don't.
Yes. Radulov too. I would think Radulov over Denisenko.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Denisenko, these last 2 are extra players. If you go beyond these,
I know, but that's why I'm putting Podkolzin in there.
And I know Russ will laugh at this, but you have to think that possibly Kovalchuk would make it.
I'd say possibly. I don't know if he would, but you're right.
They probably would put Kovalchuk on there, which makes them not as good, in my mind.
Well, I mean, if he replaces a young guy like a Kaprizov, you're right, because I think Kaprizov is a talented player. But no, you shifted.
It's still a good team, though. This is a team capable of beating anybody.
Yep.
Yeah,
and what they'd have to do, is they would have to lean heavily on 3 defensemen,
right?
And they would have to lean heavily on their top 2 lines, but that's no problem.
Well, here's your defense, okay? So that I had at least.
I think their 3 are very deep. Those top 3 are very deep. Orlov's going to get a little long in the tooth. Zaitsev is okay. So I think, like I said, I think they'd be leaning heavily on the 3.
Voyanov will be on the list.
Yeah.
I think Voyanov is in here, but would he be allowed?
Yes. And I think over Zub, it would be Alexander Romanov, the Canadian.
Montreal, yeah.
Yeah, that's possible. All right.
Zadorov gives him that physical presence that they're going to be looking for because that's his game in general.
Yeah, right. And goaltending wise, they are very strong. I mean, I think this is where
goalies, man.
I think they're the best. I think they're the best team in goal.
And I think there's a possibility that Bobrovsky could be. Remember, this is 2 years later that you could see Bobrovsky drop off, and a guy like Sorokin? Either Sorokin or Samsonov.
Right.
Yeah, very possible. I wouldn't say Bob is a lock yet for that team.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I mean, Bob might not be a lock for that team.
He would have to bounce
because they may value the other 2 ahead of him, and then do you really want to bring Bob as a 3rd?
I don't know. The more I think about it, I'm going to disagree with myself and say that I think Bob is
or the Islanders goalie. I'm drawing a blank right now.
You said
Varlamov?
No. The starter right now. I'm losing.
Yeah.
Varlamov. Yeah, I mean, as a backup, it is possible.
Varlamov has a bad history, right? They're not really. He lost the last Olympics, or was it the last Olympics where Varlamov was terrible for them? I think it was.
I don't remember.
No, they went.
They should have played Bob, and they played Varlamov the entire time, and that was a real problem for the Russians.
I'm telling you though, the team I still think, and we'll find out next week, that you're underrating would be Sweden. I think Sweden would give.
I'm going to get Sweden now. I'm going to do Sweden now. Or no, actually, it's 2-5.
We'll save it for Monday because we have Kevin tomorrow.
But Sweden is going to be a heck of a team, man.
Sweden is a good team, and I'm looking at them. I mean, their defense. This is probably the best defense.
It's the best defense.
The forwards are really good. Their goaltending.
It's going to be a young goalie. That's what it's going to end up. It'll be Leonard and then some other young goalies in case Leonard's not as good. Leonard, Markstrom, and then it'll be a young goalie.
We'll talk about it, but I think it's going to be Markstrom. I think it's going to be Markstrom and Leonard. And
it'll be Markstrom to start. It could.
And then maybe, we'll talk about it. But
Markstrom had a great year this year. If he continues, then yes.
Olmark and the Flyers goalie that they have, what's his name?
Ursun could be a guy that could possibly make it as a 3rd. You never know.
But and then you're not. I mean, and you're definitely not looking at. There's no way at all that Lundqvist. At
39.
No.
As much as I love him, I just don't think so.
He's such a legend. If he keeps
wouldn't be on that team on the bench anyhow. Like he just wouldn't.
Yeah.
It would drive him crazy.
Why don't you bring Thomas Salo back?
No, but Lundqvist. I mean, he's the best goalie in Swedish hockey history. I mean, he's like Lundqvist is the guy.
Yeah, he is.
And so it's.
I know Flyers fans are going to say Lindbergh, but he just didn't get to play long enough.
Oh no, yeah, no. I'm the biggest Paul Lindbergh fan in the world, but no, Lundqvist is the best. He's the best by far. He just
thank God for Bill Baker.
What was that?
Bill Baker scoring late.
I said thank God for Bill Baker.
Yeah, there you go. So so that's
maybe Matt Sundin will come back and play for this team.
Yeah, if he waives his no trade clause.
Yeah.
So loves Matt Sundin. It's like a Pavlovian response every time the name is mentioned.
Well, as soon as Russ said it, he did it.
It's a Pavlovian response that we get.
Correct. He has like hockey
just visceral reaction from the name.
Hey, it's like you want the greatest hits, you got them, baby.
It's so funny. I still I'm going to talk to my St. Louis fan and find out why he hates Tarasenko.
Don't even bother.
Yeah,
I'm going to, because I think that their
opinion is worthless.
No, it's not. It's not worthless. I mean, he's had
in this era when you score 11 points in the playoffs, that's good.
11 goals.
11 goals. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that is good. That is strong. No question about it. This year, he was hurt a lot this year. Only played 10 games this year. So
right.
They had 10 points, but still, I think that I don't know. He's a frustrating. I've been frustrated by him, but maybe I'm wrong.
Has he maximized the talent that maybe he has? No, but 37, 40, 39, 33, and 33 goals in 5 straight years is pretty darn good.
He's a goal scorer, no questions asked. Right, he's a goal scorer. He is not obviously not a defensive player at all. He's very fast. He's very quick. He was really in World Cup of Hockey. He was one of those guys that you definitely noticed. Like when
Acting's no Travis connecting. I get it.
Hey, here's just to finish off the show here. Here's an interesting what if.
Right.
Just written on the NBC website, NBC Chicago website. Apparently, Mike Smith, the former Hawks GM, who later became GM of the Leafs, or previously had been a GM of the Leafs, said that his successor, Bob Pulford, was intending to trade Duncan Keith when Duncan Keith was a prospect to the Arizona Coyotes in a deal to bring back Jeremy Roenick and Tony Amonte to Chicago.
Yeah, it doesn't shock me. I mean, they were looking to fill the seats. Nobody really knew that.
Like, if you go by, we can go back a ways, but that was a rumor on Hockey Buzz. I remember that whole thing going down. And the reason I remember going down was I went to Chicago to cover. I did this series I had back then called Anonymous Hockey Blogger Visits the New NHL City. And I went and did my Chicago thing sat at the morning skate with Alison Maglia, our writer.
Oh yeah.
And I sat with them at the morning skate and I watched them play and I saw this Duncan Keith guy out there who was being scratched at the time. This was the day before. I guess who was it that was fired before they brought in Quenneville?
Denny Savard.
Right. This is the day before Savard gets fired that I'm in there. Right. And so I saw them play. I was on the flight home. By the time I got home, they had made a coaching change. And actually, I think it was before Savard.
It may have been because he was established by that point.
It was the guy right before Savard who got fired. And that's right. So Savard was hired. But so I'm sitting there and I'm watching the morning skate and I watched the game.
Trent Yawney.
That was it. It was Trent Yawney got fired. So I'm sitting there and because I talked to him that night, and I'm watching the morning skate and I'm watching this kid like fly around the ice after everybody else is gone, who I didn't notice at all. And this was Duncan Keith in his like rookie year, and he's all over the place. And I'm like, that kid is amazing. And Alison Maggie said to me, yeah, they don't like him. They don't like him.
You know why? Because he had 2 lousy years in the AHL, and honestly, he had 2 mediocre years to start off for the Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Like it took him a while to become Duncan Keith. He, like a lot of defensemen, it took him longer to mature as a defenseman. And when he did that, he hit like gangbusters.
Yeah.
But he was 20 points in the AHL, and he was 20 points for a couple of years in the NHL.
He didn't turn into Duncan Keith until he was 24 years old.
Right. And that's what happens with a lot of guys.
But you could see it was the kind of thing you could see on the ice, like in the morning.
Yeah, you were watching his raw ability.
Watching his skating ability was like, that guy is smooth. Like I hadn't seen anybody. Honestly, I remember saying to Al, like, I haven't seen a defenseman with that kind of smoothness since Paul Coffey. And I said that flat out to him. I'm like, that's kind of crazy. They don't like him. He can't play in his own end. He's terrible.
Well, and the thing is, and especially about defensemen, Russ, and this is the frustrating thing about a guy like Jake Gardner, is when early in his career you saw that raw quality. You saw like he was making a lot of mistakes, but he had these innate tools. He had the skating ability, he had the shot. Keith became a more well-rounded defenseman, a more effective defenseman. Gardner never improved at the things he needed to improve to become a top pairing.
I think that's fair. I mean, the Gardner that you saw at Wisconsin was very similar to the Gardner you see today. I think that's fair.
And the funny thing is, his defensive partner at Wisconsin, who had the same label on him when he was with Anaheim, when he was with Edmonton, finally shook that off. And I'm talking about Justin Schultz. Finally shook it off when he went to Pittsburgh and became more of a two-way defenseman. Gardner, for some reason, never did. And that's one of the reasons why he became such a lightning rod to Leaf fans, because they saw the ability and they just said, this guy's never going to change. And there are players like that who can never improve.
Pittsburgh has done a really good job with player development. They've turned around quite a few players because they've had to. Like, they've literally had to take chances on players based on cap problems and signing. We've talked about signings and drafting. Penguins have been really good drafting, but turning guys around like that had been their specialty. And Schultz, their last Stanley Cup win, he was a massive part of it.
Yeah. Oh, completely true.
I mean, it was unbelievable actually at the time how Edmonton couldn't get rid of him quick enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. They couldn't. They absolutely couldn't. Interesting.
Okay.
All right. That's all the time we have. Thanks, Jan, for joining us as always.
We will have Kevin Allen tomorrow at 1:00.
I apologize. Maybe it was my haircut or something like that I'm just like completely clueless as to what's going on today. So I feel like I had a lousy show, but I'll be back tomorrow. Don't always bring your A game.
No, just blame the Tarasenko take on your friend.
Oh, I'll definitely do that. There's no question about it. He's the guy who runs our website, and he's like, a huge fan.
Oh, okay. Now I know. Okay.
No, but he's a lifelonger.
I know.
All right. Remember, without the buzz,
it's completely wrong. It's all right.
That's fine. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.